Hi, good evening or good morning, everyone. Not evening yet. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the new COVID-19 relief funding for small businesses. We're going to give everyone a few minutes to log in today. And in the meantime, just a few housekeeping things. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A box rather than the chat box. That'll help keep on track and make sure that we get to your questions. Sometimes the chat box can get a little busy with either private messages going back and forth, or just messages between participants. So be sure to use the Q&A box for any relevant questions that you have for this presentation. And again, we're just going to give a few more minutes for everyone to log in. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, before we do, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A rather than the chat box. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to your presenter today, or one of your presenters today, Amber.
Thank you so much, Laura. I always like to give Laura props because she keeps us in line and has everything organized for us. So I always appreciate Laura. So if we were in person instead of a webinar, I would ask you to give her a round of applause. So she's always awesome. So good morning and welcome to the COVID-19 relief funding for small businesses. Our goal at the SBDC is to keep our business owners updated on the latest guidance. Our discussion today is going to be just part of our training series that we've done the last couple of weeks. And we'll continue to offer a high-level overview of the latest updates. Our presentation will be available to attendees also after our presentation is over. The next slide will show you our topics for today. All right, we're going to discuss the Paycheck Protection Program, First Draw and Second Draw, and forgiveness, the EIDL Loan Program Extension, Targeted EIDL Advanced Grant, Debt Relief Program, grants for Shuttered Venue Operators, and then we'll have a chat about our SBDC counseling services at no fee. And I did just want to add to, in order to be able to get through the information that we're sharing with you today, we ask that you hold the questions to the end of our Q&A section. We'll have towards the end of our presentation. There's just a lot of information we'd like to make sure that we get through because it's very informative, and we want to keep all of the questions towards the end so we can make sure we get through all of the information for everyone today. And if you have specific individual questions, I would recommend obviously speaking to one of our business analysts. That would be most beneficial. We do have a disclaimer that we want to make sure that we share with you. We have to ensure that you understand the information that we're sharing is the most updated material, and it comes directly from the guidance of the Small Business Administration. Understand also that the information is always updating. It's ever changing, you know how the government does. So be sure to visit the website that's listed here. We have to make sure that you understand that it's ever changing, and everything that we're talking about today is what we know of as of today. So moving on to who we are. We'd like to just share a little bit of quick introductions. I'm going to see if Nancy is able to tell us a little bit about herself. I know we were having a little bit of technical difficulties. Nancy, are you able to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. I've been with the SBDC for going on a year, and before that I was my specialty as a counselor is buying and selling businesses. I've owned several businesses, bought and sold them one time with a broker, And after that, I became a business broker. So my specialties are that, and along with business startup, pre-ventures, and then running businesses. So I'm really excited to be here, and I have technical difficulties with the audio, so I hope we do okay. So anyway, I'm glad you're here.
Thanks, Nancy. I always enjoy the opportunity to work with Nancy. We have a lot of fun, and she has a lot of great knowledge that I like to learn from her as well. My name is Amber. I'm a business funding analyst with the Maricopa SBD Center. We're the resource for small business financial literacy. We help guide, educate, and support business owners on how to be financial leaders of your business. Before working for the SBDC, I worked for the Limited, which is, you guys might know, the Limited used to be Victoria's Secret and Bath and Body Works and a plethora of other businesses, but they've since sold off individually. But I worked for them for 14 years, moving to 7 different states for that. With that career, we finally called Arizona home about 13 and a half years ago. I love it here. I don't want to move. My best friend tells me back home that it's like 3 degrees, and I'm like, okay, I'm happy to be in Arizona. I do have a passion, just like Nancy, for helping businesses, seeing them flourish, and knowing the sacrifice and dedication it takes for us to succeed. And so we understand what it takes for everyone to have to do their part to make sure that our business flourish. I'm happy to be a part of discussion today, so thanks for welcoming us. We'd also like to tell you a little bit about our Maricopa Small Business Development Center. That's what SBDC stands for. We are part of a powerful statewide network, America's SBDC Arizona, which is accredited by the nationwide America's SBDC. We do have, we are funded in part of a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Administration, and we're hosted by the SBA community colleges. Our offices are typically in the colleges. Obviously, right now we're not in our offices, we're working virtually, but we also enjoy partnerships with the City of Peoria and the Arizona Commerce Authority. Our mission is to guide, educate, and support our business clients, from pre-venture clients, like if you just have an idea, to people that are just starting out their businesses, or to even long-standing businesses that's been open for a long time that need maybe just a little boost in their business development. Our no-fee counseling focuses on helping you launch, grow, and sustain your small business. We do have a kind of a larger team of business analysts in the Maricopa Center, and we have extensive experience in the industries that are listed here in the technical assistance areas that are listed on your screen. We do have a wide range of resources that will be able to provide assistance. And when I see this slide, I don't know why, all I think of is that commercial that's like, that says you have an app for that. Nancy, you know what I'm talking about. I always think, well, we have an analyst for that. So if you don't see your industry on here, don't worry about it. We have an analyst for that. And the Maricopa SBDC also offers research and training programs with access to tools and resources to help your business development. So rest assured that we can help you, no matter if your business is listed on here too. We have an analyst for that. What cool tools, you ask? Well, we're going to show you on our next slide. So the following is an example of just some of the valuable resources we have to offer our clients. And, you know, as business owners, we know that it's important to have good resources in our toolkit. And listed here, you see Growth Wheel, Live Plan, Profit Sense. We partner with our SBDCnet.org. And lastly, you see here is IBIS World. And that's just to name a few, because we have access to a lot of tools to help us be successful business owners. So just listing a few that you can see here that you'll probably recognize if you are working currently with a business analyst with the SBDC. Now, moving to the first part of our presentation, on to the next slide. Our topics today are going to be around the first draw, second draw, and forgiveness. The Paycheck Protection Program was put in place to keep employees on payroll, but we have to do a couple of things before we can do that. So the first draw, if we didn't apply for PPP funding in 2020, we may now apply for the first time, okay? The second draw if we did receive PPP funding in 2020, we may be eligible for the second draw. But hold on, there's a caveat to that. There's always a caveat, right? So we have to be ready. We have to have already used the funds from PPP-1 or will use the funds. That's literally the verbiage, have used or will use. So you have to have the funding for round 1 to be earmarked for eligible uses. It's important to also have documentation to show what you've used those funds on. And we'll talk a little bit about supplemental documentation in a couple of slides down the road here. But we have to have that supplemental documentation to support our calculations that we're going to show you here in a minute. The PPP is open through March 31st. It's literally right around the corner. We always want to make sure we tell our clients that, gosh, remember, it takes time to complete those applications. I don't know if you guys have ever done one yet, but the process, it takes a minute. So don't wait till the very last minute. Don't wait to do it on the 31st, because there is a process. The application must be in process and have a loan number attached before that 31st deadline. So just keep that in mind. Don't stall, don't procrastinate, get it done. Let us know if we can help you. I actually was kind of wanting to see if, I don't know if we have the ability to do a quick hand raise of our participants to see how many of us have already applied for the first round. Is it possible to see a hand raise? Donna, do you know, is it?
Yeah, and we only have 2 clients in here, so Molly
Okay.
Has raised her hand.
Okay, so we have 1 client. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that, Donna. Well, hopefully we can get her all the information that that she needs today for the second draw. She's already done the first draw, but let's discuss who's eligible to apply for clients who have not done the first draw yet. So the newly added eligible businesses with 300 or fewer employees are housing cooperatives, DMOs or destination marketing organizations like tourism boards, visitors bureaus. There are certain nonprofit 501c organizations such as chambers of commerce. And then there are also eligible news organizations. The list that are still eligible is obviously the LLCs, the partnerships, corporations, sole props, independent contractors. There's 2 501Cs with nonprofit and veteran organizations, and also tribal businesses. We also have a few additional eligibility requirements on our next slide. There's just a few more rules here. Our business needs to have been in operation on February 15th, on or before, obviously, February 15th, 2020. And not permanently closed. Now, I just wanted to clarify that verbiage where it says been in operation. It means that you have to be active. That means you need to make a profit, you had to have paid payroll, etc. Not that you've registered with the Arizona Corporation Commission prior to February 15th. Just because you register with the Arizona Corporation Commission doesn't mean you're in business, or doesn't mean you're in operation. It means you have to be made a profit, had payroll, you've been in operation. Self-employed individual, independent contractors, or sole props with no employees, or self-employed or sole prop with employees for whom paid salaries are also eligible. Seasonal businesses, they must have been in operation for any consecutive 12-week period. Now you get to pick that 12-week period if it's a couple of different 12-week periods, but it has to be a consecutive 12-week period between February 12th, 2019 and February 12th, 2020. Let's see. Yeah, now that we know that who's eligible, let's look to see where we go to apply. This slide shows a list of approved PPP lenders if you go to the SBA website, and it actually breaks it down for even Arizona for us to reference. There's also a lender match. That's a free online tool with the SBA, which I think is a pretty cool tool that connects small businesses with SBA approved lenders. That is really good for PPP or traditional lending as well, but it's not good if you're looking to do the EIDL loan. It's not for that. It's just for PPP and traditional lending. But keep in mind that it's not required that you use the same lender for our client who has already done PPP-1 first draw, you don't have to go back to that same lender, but it's recommended. I was on a SBA call, gosh, not too long ago, and their advice was to strongly encourage our clients to use the same lender for PPP-2 as you did for PPP-1, because that lender has easy access to all your information. I mean, because you're going to need your loan number, your NAICS code, your loan amount. There's a lot of information on your first draw application that they have access to, that this just would be easy to transition. So it just seems to make sense to the same lender, to use the same lender. I know I'll be using that for clients. But I did hear that larger banks, Nancy, I know that we talked about this in our meeting, on our staff meeting, but I know a lot of the larger banks aren't using aren't doing the PPP applications in person. I know that they're doing them digitally. I know that that's something that we talked about in our meeting. And I know, because I know that they're kind of hands off now because they were bombarded on PPP-1. Have you heard any lenders not doing the second round altogether? Have you heard anything like that? I wondered if it was coming, because everyone was kind of inundated. It was hectic for both clients and lenders, but I haven't either. I haven't heard that people aren't doing the second round, but obviously check this list on the SBA website. I wanted to just quickly, before we get to the calculations portion, which will be on our next slide here in a sec, there are some things that we'll need to complete the application. The IRS tax returns, business tax returns, if applicable, the IRS 1040 form. So we'll need your Schedule C, if applicable, payroll statements and documentation. So whatever you use to calculate or to track your payroll, you'll need. And then it's important that you know your NAICS code, or your Northern Industry Classification Systems code, because there's some calculations that matter if you're in a particular NAICS code or not. And then for the PPP-Second draw, you'll need your PPP loan number, like I just said. And then you'll also need your profit and loss to show, or whatever you use to show your quarter 25% loss. So those are just a couple of things that you'll need to make sure that you do, or before you grab your application, make sure you grab all that information. Let's do some calculations on the next slide. Now, this is the animated slide, Donna. So this is one of the common questions that we've seen of our clients. And we quickly, we tried to make this as easy as possible for the math part. Okay, I know that we wear many hats as a business owner, and math probably isn't one of our favorites, but we're going to walk through it and give an example. So let's put on our student hats here. So pointing out some differences in self-employed and seasonal calculations. For self-employed and sole props, or sole proprietors without employees, our first step is that we'll need your 2019 or 2020 Form 1040, Schedule C, line 31. That's why I said this is the form we'll need, which is your net profit. Okay, the salary cap is 100,000. You'll hear me say that a couple of times. So we'll subtract anything above 100,000. Okay. Then we divide that number by 12 for the 12 months out of the year to get your average monthly salary. And lastly, we'll multiply the average monthly salary by that 2.5 to get our loan amount request. Okay. Now for self-employed sole props with employees, it is similar to the first calculation. So we use either the 2019 or 2020 1040 form, Schedule C, again with the line 31, that's our net profit amount. We will also subtract, like we did above, the 100,000 cap amount. Remember, we don't include in our employees any 1099 employees or independent contractors, because they need to apply on their own. Just refer them to us, and we'll help them get their application done, but they need to apply on their own. Do not include them in this calculation. We need to calculate the monthly average salary again by dividing the number by 12 because there's 12 months in a year, right? And lastly, we multiply that number by that 2.5 again, just like we did in the first example. Now on to seasonal employers. We use the same average payments for any consecutive 12-week period, like I mentioned earlier, that you get to choose between February 15th, 2019 and February 15th, 2020. So those are the differences between the different calculating loan amounts. Now let's see what it looks like an example on our next slide. We have a specific example. So here's an example with our step one. Now, there's a lot of math that's going along with this. Keep in mind, these are, very simple numbers just for easy math calculation. But our step one is our aggregated, I don't know why that's hard for me to say, payroll costs from either 2019 or 2020 is 120,000. Okay, that's what you see in that first box there. Our step two, we subtract any compensation over that $100,000 cap, which in this example, there are not any clients that are, employees over that $100,000 cap. For our step three, we divide the 120 in step two by 12. So that 120,000 by 12 is 10,000, pretty easy math. In our step four, we multiply that 10,000 from step three, which is 2.5, and that is 25,000. So 10,000 times 2.5 is 25,000. As a reminder, we added step five just to keep you in, to remind you that in an EIDL loan, or the economic injury disaster loan, if you want to refinance, you put in that little box there. So in this example, we don't have an EIDL loan that we want to refinance, so we're not putting anything here, it's zero. The final maximum loan amount of 25,000 is what we'll be applying for in our PPP application. Okay, that's our first example. Now on example two, there are some employees that make a little bit more. So our next example. Step one, obviously, again, we're doing the aggregated payroll. In this example, it is 1.5 million. In step two, we subtract everyone that's making a salary of 100,000. And in this example, it looks like we have 3 employees that are making 100,000. So we minus 300,000 from that 1.5, which makes it 1.2. Okay. Now for a step three, we take the 1.2 million and divide by 12, again, for that average monthly payroll. This gives us 100,000. So that's 100,000 a month. So in step four, 100,000 is multiplied by 2.5, giving us a total of 250,000. For step five, again, in this example, we don't have any EIDL loan that we're wanting to refinance. So our maximum loan amount we'll apply for is that 250,000. Now, I hope those examples kind of make a little bit more sense. But again, every business is unique and we have specific questions, I'm sure. We encourage you to partner with your SBDC business analyst. And if you don't have one, please keep in mind that we're here to help you. But we can't give accounting advice, but we are pretty good at math. So we can help you put those numbers in and plug into that formula. And I'm assuming that your payroll numbers aren't as easy as our examples here, but upon completing the application, it also walks us through that. So when you're looking at your applications online, it walks you through that process. So that's kind of cool. So don't panic if you don't get these examples written down. So now we could breathe. We got that math part out of the way and we survived it. Let's take a look at our supplemental documentation on our next slide that we'll need. We mentioned a few times that it's important to keep documentation, and here's why, because you will be held accountable for providing proof to validate the calculations that we just did, and the proof of being in operations prior to February 15th deadline, that February 15th, 2020 date. On the application itself, there is a spot where it just says you are self-certifying. You have to initial or check that you're self-certifying. You're not required to provide the documentation at the time of the application, but you have to keep it all together because you'll be required to have it when we do our forgiveness, which is what we want to make sure we keep everything together. I encourage everyone, really to create a digital file. So as you're doing your calculations, just create a file and put it on your computer, your desktop or whatever. Or if you're more comfortable doing a physical old school paper file, I'll tell you, just have it handy. So when that forgiveness application comes around, you'll have it accessible. Here's a list of examples of what you're going to need. That's what's on this slide. I don't need to read through it, but it gives you a good example of the things that you'll be needing. They may request additional items such as your Arizona Corporation Commission good standing report, different things like that. So there's a couple of things that here's just a list of a couple of things that you may need. We can go to the next slide here. Now that we know who's eligible and we know how to calculate the amount, what supplemental documentation is required, let's make sure we're within our perimeters to get as much forgiven as possible. I know Nancy and I counsel our clients, and we want to make sure that we get 100% forgiven, right? I want to make sure that there's no loan when that forgiveness piece comes around. So I want to make sure I can get as much forgiven as possible. So let's see what we need to do that. Here's a couple of little things to keep us in mind. 60% is used for payroll, okay? 40% is used for eligible business expenses, or you can use 100% for payroll, right? So it doesn't mean that you have to use, it has to be a 60-40 split, but you can use 100% for payroll if you wish to do that. And also just keep in mind that the employee compensation levels must be maintained. That's kind of a caveat with being able to get a PPP loan. Now, we are to choose between that 8 or 24-week covered payroll period. The covered payroll period starts the day that you get your funds in your account. So when you see that hit your account, just remember that's when your 8 or 24-week period, covered period starts. So just keep that in mind. Previously, I know that the EIDL advance, if the client who had the PPP-1, I don't know if you got the EIDL advance, but I know that for forgiveness, that EIDL advance amount was deducted. But now with the changes that came in the new year, that deduction is no longer necessary. So that's kind of an awesome thing that we don't have to worry about that calculation. So the EIDL advance is no longer deducted from that for PPP forgiveness amount in round 1. Our next slide, we'll take a look at what constitutes payroll expenses, that 60%. So 60%, to reach our PPP goal of having 60% and as much forgiven as possible, salary, wages, commissions, or other similar compensation, which like cash tips or equivalent. But I put in here too, I want to make sure that you understand that can't be over that $100,000 cap that we talked about a couple slides previous. And you have to make sure that that employee resides in the US. Their primary residence has to reside in the US. Those are a couple of things that they put in there too. Payments for vacation, parental, family, medical or sick leave, allowance for separation or dismissal. You see the other things that go on here that are eligible payroll expenses. And again, don't panic about writing all of these down because you'll be able to have access to our slides. So, but there's just a list here of what is an eligible payroll expense that you could put 60% towards. Now on our next slide, we'll look at what considered a business expense. These are other expenses, and this is eligible use of funds. Now we have 60% that we've used on payroll. Now the existing 40% we use on this expanded list. It's actually a newer list from PPP-1, but it is rent and mortgage interest. And just keep in mind that is for business and personal property. Utilities, and I know utilities are a big question. I know, Nancy, I'm sure you get this question a lot too, but they're like, what is utilities? What constitutes utilities? And I always just make sure you say it's electricity, obviously, your business phone, business internet, water, that kind of thing. That's what is a utility under this. And I'm sure that you could partner with your accountant to find out what else is eligible, because there's a long list of things that you could possibly put under utilities. There's a caveat with that too, is that those contract agreements for all of those utilities have to be predated February 15th, 2020. So you couldn't have got your internet the summer 2020 and then calculate that into your, or put that into your calculation. It's not acceptable. It's not eligible. Interest on debt obligations that incurred before February 15th, 2020, covered operation expenses, covered property damage. And just so we are clear on this, I want to point out that the property damage is damage from 2020 rioting, vandalism, any looting, anything like that. I don't know if either of our clients on has experienced that, but if it wasn't covered by insurance or any other compensation, then that is covered. You could put that in eligible use of eligible expenses. Covered supplier cost and covered worker protection expenditures, such as like plexi protectors, even masks, sanitizer, like those kinds of worker protection expenditures you can add on here too. Okay, so now that we have everything within our forgiveness buckets, so we have that 60% and that 40%, we'll figure out how long we have to prepare to make those payments. I love this timeline. We mentioned covered period earlier, and we should get familiar with that term. This is a time frame that we have to use the PPP funds, and we talked about 8 and 24. So we have a minimum of 8 and a maximum of 24 weeks from the date the funds are dispersed. Again, that's important. So whenever you see it in your checking account or whatever account you put it in, that's when it starts this 8 or 24 week period. Okay. So for example, if we, on this animated slide, if we receive funds in March, we have up to 24 weeks to use the funds, which brings us to August. Let's see if we can, there we go. All right. This begins our 10-month time frame to apply for forgiveness. So I have to be honest, don't forget to do this. Put it on your calendar or something. If we don't apply for forgiveness, our PPP loan is no longer in deferment. The PPP amount becomes a loan, and we're required to start making payments on that loan. Now, granted, the PPP lender is supposed to be in contact with them, but as far as sending access to their application and their time frame and all that kind of stuff. But I know that our team has heard that lenders haven't been the greatest at communicating to its borrowers during this time because there's so much newness and everything. So right now we are just encouraging our clients to be proactive in reaching out. Send an email to make sure it's time stamped, and whoever you've been in communication with. That's important because we need to make sure that we stay in communication for that forgiveness guidance. Don't panic though. Most lenders don't even know what they're doing yet. They're not getting much from our legislation, so they're waiting for further guidance as well. But just kind of keep this timeline in the back of your mind. But making sure that you're checking your spam and your spam folders, your tracks folders, their website, do all the things that you should be doing, because this general timeline for the forgiveness process is a big deal. Now, on the next, there shows that there's that 10 months forgiveness from August after the 24 weeks. There we go. Now keep in mind that there's that 10 months period. We want to make sure that we stay abreast of that. So it seems like a hurry up and wait, but we have to make sure that we have everything ready. That timeline, lenders have 60 days from the receipt after we do our forgiveness application to complete a completed loan forgiveness application to get it to the SBA. Then the SBA reviews it, and then it has 90 days to remit back to the lender. And then the lender notifies the borrower of the forgiveness amount and its details. So you understand that it's that 8 to 24 week period. And then that red shows 10 months. And then after that 10 months and you do your application, I mean, it's 60 days and then up to 90 days. So you see that there's quite a long timeline, but you want to make sure that you don't miss anything. So just keep this timeline in mind. So let's take a look at our next slide. And everyone knows that terms are important. That's what we're looking at, but there's no such thing as free money, right? So it's funny because as I look at these terms, I was a former lender, like I said earlier with Chase, and I'm thinking that a 1% interest is pretty close to free money. I don't know about you, Nancy, but every time I see something, I see this, I'm like, oh my God, that's free money. but we want to do what we can to make sure everything is forgivable. But if it's not, these are the rates, which is another good point, I guess, because there's no credit check for the PPP loan. But I want to make sure that you understand that the 1% interest is based on the loan amount. Let's see, the length of the loan, otherwise known as the maturity of the loan, is 5 years. It's kind of similar to a car payment, right? There's no prepayment penalty. If we're doing so great and we want to pay it back before that 5 years to get it off our books and free up some cash flow, we won't get penalized for it. Okay, so that's what that means with no prepayment penalty. Keep in mind, though, that the interest does accrue from the date of disbursement, but you don't make any payments on the principal or the interest until the date the SBA remits back to the lender. Okay, remember that timeline I told you about, that there's a process when the SBA submits it back. There's no interest until that date. Keep in mind that timeline that we talked about a minute ago. All right, so moving on to our next slide. We're going to be talking about the second draw. And now we've gotten our first draw loan, all is forgiven. Now, what do we need to do if we need more funding? We apply for the second draw. Now, I was gonna have a raise of hands of how many are doing the second draw. I'm assuming the first person, I believe her name was Molly, did the first one. So now we're doing the second one. So hopefully this information will answer some of your questions if you have any, if we go on to the next slide.
Sorry, Amber, Molly says
Yes.
she has a question for you, but I don't know what
Yeah.
the question is because she hasn't typed it in, and she does have her hand raised. Can you take her question right now?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, Laura, I don't know if you can, I don't have the ability to unmute the panelists, or Molly, if you could just type it in the Q&A box, we can get Amber to answer your question. I don't know if Laura's there. Okay, let's move on. Molly, if you can just type it in the Q&A box, then we can get Amber to answer it, because we don't know what your question is right now.
Yeah.
I can unmute Donna. I just now found it.
Okay,
How
thank
to
you.
unmute her. So Molly, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you if you would like to ask your question.
Oh, wow, I have a voice. Hi.
Yay, yes, you have a voice.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited to have this information. I can't believe that more people aren't on, but
Yeah, well, this is the smallest group we've had. We've been doing it for a couple of weeks, but this is the smallest group, but we're happy to help you. You're
Okay.
VIP. You're VIP today, you and our other guest.
so we have some clients that have greater revenues, but a lot of the people that I'm working with and trying to give advice, I'm a tax professional and I am also a small business owner. My numbers were really easy. For 2019, my revenue was 10,000. And so the people that I'm talking to are curious as they head into the 2020 tax season, how do they show that 25% reduction in revenue? And a lot of them are on hold with their first PPP loan forgiveness. So, it's like, well, we have a deadline coming up and these people are late on their, it's very small businesses that are very much feeling a crunch for the funds. And so I'm thinking, gosh, these people need to apply for the second PPP, but we just want to make sure that the first one's going to be forgiven, and then how, they don't want to dive into applying for a second if they haven't finished their taxes and they don't know exactly where they're at.
Molly, I'm sure that you know this, but if you don't, I apologize. All right, I apologize if you already know this, but they have, lenders have until the end of the week. That would be the mark of the 10 days. Friday is the mark of the 10 days that SBA said that lenders have to let our clients know about forgiveness for first round. So Friday marks that 10-day period. We learned that this morning. Every Wednesday we have an SBA call every morning, and our SBA call told us this morning that Friday is our deadline for lenders to let our clients know about their forgiveness.
Friday the 19th.
Yep. So we're just kind of hanging out until the 19th for additional guidance. I know that, I know it's stressful for the business owners, but we've just been telling everyone, and actually the SBA tells us as well, to the guidance that we have been giving our clients is that it doesn't, they shouldn't panic. I mean, I know that we're kind of, like I said, hurry up and wait. It's a waiting game, and you know that when it comes to the government, but we're just waiting on the guidance. We haven't gotten it yet. So we don't know. Some of the lenders don't even know what they're doing for forgiveness. I've had a client call their bank, and it's a very large bank, and they've called multiple branches, and the branch really has no idea what advice to give them because they haven't gotten any guidance. So as soon as we know, we can either reach out to you, myself or Nancy can reach out to you, so you can share with your clients, however you want to do that. If you want to, are you working with an SBDC counselor right now?
It was Paula Whittakind, but yeah. So there's a new one, Connie, who I think I'm going to be working with.
Okay, Connie is actually part of our support staff, or she's our operation. I say support. She's our part of our operations team. So she'll be assigning you a counselor.
Okay.
So Paula actually very knowledgeable. She actually has just gotten a new position, so her duties have changed quite a bit. Yeah, Paula's very knowledgeable. But if you're getting a new counselor, I'm telling you, we have a lot of really great counselors. So you're going to get a lot of great information. But if you wish to visit with either Nancy or myself, you can certainly reach out to Connie, and we'll keep you updated. I mean, you could let me know, and you could let her know if you wish to speak to either Nancy or myself, and we can make sure that we get assigned to you if you wish to do that.
Okay. And for, I know you don't have a definite answer, but wasn't there a threshold that they've discussed that they would be doing automatic forgiveness, like under 150 or something?
So that's still in the works, and I actually talk about that here in a minute. And I was going to tell you, one of your questions was the 25% reduction. I'll go through that here in just a minute,
Okay.
and then the calculation. But that 150,000 threshold, anything under that blanket forgiveness, they are we're still waiting for that whole stimulus package and like all of that legislation to go through. We don't know yet. Again, with the waiting game, we're waiting on that guidance from the SBA because legislation hasn't passed that yet. That would be
is that tied to the third stimulus package?
It's all together. They're all voting on it at the same time. So yeah, it's tied to all of that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry. I know that that's not appeasing your clients, but unfortunately, we're waiting as well for additional guidance. The 25% reduction, Molly, I'll talk about here in just a second. And then I did mention that I'll mention the 150,000 I was going to mention here in a second. But if you have any more questions, please, just holler and we can try to answer them.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Absolutely. Let's see. This is kind of where I was at on this eligibility. The second draw, we must have previously had the first draw used, or will use the full amount for eligible, or have them earmarked. And I was going to say, Molly, too, it doesn't have to be fully forgiven before you can apply for the second round. Now, I understand as a business owner, if I'm not forgiven, I don't want to have that loan and then apply for another round and get another loan to not be forgiven. So I totally get that, but I just wanted to make that clear. It doesn't have to be forgiven before they can apply for the second round. It just has to be either used or earmarked to be used for eligible expenses. You have to have,
Amber,
yes.
Most of them are being forgiven.
Yes. Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're so right. Thanks for pointing that out. This morning when we had our call, what Nancy's talking about, they said that, oh my gosh, what was the percentage? I should have wrote that down, but there was a large percentage they said as of this morning. Yeah. Now, this is the biggest one, and Molly, you just asked, the 25% reduction in gross revenue. It's between comparable quarters of 2019 and 2020. So, and you get to pick the quarter. So yeah, you get to pick the quarter. On the simple application, which is the 3508S, which is S for simple, that's the application title. it only asks what quarters you're using and comparing, like what quarter from 2019 are you comparing to 2020 to have that reduction. And then it asks what your gross receipts are. That's all it asks for. So when you're doing the calculation, you want to make sure, obviously, and Molly, you can appreciate this with numbers, but you'll need to know what quarter you're using, but you could pick the quarter. So obviously pick the worst quarter, because we want to make sure that we get, it's 25% or more, right? That quick calculation reminder, the max amount is 2.5 average monthly 2019 or 2020 payroll cost, up to 2 million. And then for borrowers in the NAICS code of 72, which is accommodation and food service industry, again, which is why your NAICS code is important. The maximum loan for that 72 NAICS code is 3.5, up to 2 million, which is cool because, you get more money under that NAICS code. So, okay, so if we want to go to the next slide here. Thank you. In the spirit of obviously maintaining our integrity and applying for these loans, we want to make sure that we have that proof of that 25% reduction. If that documentation isn't produced, it could cause the loan to not be forgiven. And I know that that's what Molly was talking about. Some of her clients, we want to make sure that it gets forgiven before we move on to the next second draw. And it could actually end up being a loan that you're required to pay back. So we need to make sure that when we're applying, we create those files that we talked about earlier. Now, in hopes that legislature does pass that $150,000 blanket forgiveness, anything under $150,000 will be forgiven, and we don't have to worry about all of this stuff. It will save us a lot of work. I'm sure everyone can agree that we want to put that out in the universe. We want to make sure it's less work for us. So let's put that out in the universe. And again, there's no surprise that there's a calculation on our second draw. So our next slide will walk us through how to calculate that second draw. Now, I know that we're thinking, here we go with that math again, but don't worry. We're just reinforcing what we showed you in the first calculation for the first draw. We use the same steps, except in step 4, because the change there is that 72 NAICS code. If we're in that food accommodations NAICS code, then we're multiplying by the 3.5 instead of the 2.5. So again, we get more money. So if we're in those NAICS codes. Moving on to our next slide. I know that this is a pretty big question as far as the EIDL advance. I did allude to this earlier, but for those of us who've already applied for the forgiveness prior to the recent change, had the EIDL advance subtracted from forgiveness amount, it kind of is a hot mess, but for those submitted for the forgiveness amount, the SBA will reimburse those borrowers. It'll reverse the lenders, and then it'll be reimbursed to the borrowers at that point. It's not happened just yet, but it's in the works. I know that some of our clients have gotten emails from their lenders that says, this is coming. So make sure that you be on the lookout for that. Just a couple of best practices to follow on the next slide. Obviously, read all your loan documents, keep all your information. You got to know what you're signing, okay? That's how you become financial leaders of your business, by making sure that you're aware of everything that's going on. Now, it looks like we're ready for Nancy to tell us a little bit about EIDL.
Okay. Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the economic injury loan, EIDL, and you're probably familiar with that, Molly. You've been hearing that a lot. Let me put my glasses on. The purpose of that loan is to meet financial obligations and operating expenses that couldn't have been met had the COVID-19 pandemic not occurred. So anything that has come up with that kind of expense in 2020 will be considered. And that is available until the end of this year, December 31st. This is a loan. It's not a grant, so you do have to pay it back, and it is not forgivable. The interest rates on these are also very good, not as good as 1%, but it's still very competitive, and the interest rate for small businesses is 3.75, and for any nonprofits, it's 2.75. The terms are up to 30 years. There's deferment on the first payment, but you will be paying interest for 1 year, and there's no prepayment penalties, which is excellent, or application fees. And continuing to the next slide. To be eligible, you have to have under 500 or fewer employees if you're a sole proprietor, independent contractor, any 1099 or self-employed people. It's based on the size of your business, and you can check the SBA.gov website for industry size information. The private nonprofits also have to have 500 or fewer employees. Faith-based organizations, it includes agricultural businesses, and you have to be physically located in the US. And the next slide. So the use of the funds for EIDL can be anything concerning payroll, continuation of health benefits, rent, utilities, and fixed debt payments. You do have to maintain, again, the receipts and contracts for loans, loan funds spent for 3 years from the date of final disbursement. You will be encouraged, to whatever extent it's feasible, to have American-made equipment and products used with that loan. And you can't use any of the loan proceeds to relocate unless you have prior permission from the SBA. The ineligible requirements are no dividends or bonuses, no disbursements to owners, partners, or officers. You can't use those for payment of stockholder or principal loans except those that were incurred during the disaster. And you cannot use it for expansion of your facilities or for fixed assets. The refinancing is a long-term debt, paying down or paying off loans provided or owned by other federal agencies, except the IRS obligations and penalties resulting from noncompliance with law, regulation, or other federal, state, regional, or local agencies, and contractor error or malfeasance. You can apply for this online at the www.sba.gov, which also has excellent, I don't know if you've been on this, Molly, yet, but it's got excellent information at your fingertips for any questions that you might have, and also the application process. And the next slide, Laura. So we also have the Targeted EIDL Advance Grant. This is providing funds up to $10,000 for any applicants that are in low-income communities or who have either previously received an EIDL advance loan, or those who applied but did not receive funds due to the lack of program funding. And you can also get additional information from the same website, sba.gov. To be eligible, you need to demonstrate a 30% reduction in revenue during an 8-week period beginning March 2nd last year, and you will have to have documentation to prove that. Anyone located in low-income communities or has 300 or fewer employees. This one, the participants don't need to be inquire. You will be notified by email. So let your clients know that to check their email, especially if their spam emails beginning in this month, February, and they will be notified to apply on the portal, the SBA portal. And the first priorities are to those who already received the advance in an amount less than $10,000, and then those that did not receive an advance due to lack of program funding. And we'll talk a little bit about the debt relief program. Next slide, Laura. So this is the program that provides financial reprieve for the small businesses during the pandemic. And in 2020, the SBA paid 6 months of principal interest, and that is true. Amber, can you help me with that one? It's now 3 months, is that what you said? Okay. And any associated fees owed by the SBA borrowers for 7As, 504, or microloans. And then additional funding has been provided in the new legislation as well to extend the funding into this year to the eligible borrowers.
Yeah, we just found out this morning that the debt relief is, the time frame is cut in half. So
okay, thanks. Yeah. Next slide. Okay. The SBA debt relief in 2020, those eligible for an additional 3 months are now eligible for additional 3 months of debt relief beginning in February of 2021. These are the NAICS codes that are included, and they may be eligible for 5 additional months of debt relief, and that's the restaurants again and various others. So you want to check that, and this is again all on the SBA website. New SBA loans in 2021 will be eligible for 6 months of debt relief. And then anyone with community advantage loans may be eligible for up to 8 months of debt relief. And then this one is this is called the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. And this is for anyone in the event arena. Laura, you can go to the next slide. And that includes live venue operators or promoters, theatrical producers, performing arts organizers and operators, motion picture theater operators, museum operators, and talent representatives. And so if anyone falls into that category, again, you can apply, although it's not available at this point, but will be very soon, again, at the SBA.gov website. So those that are eligible for this grant have been in operation since February 29th of 2020. You must show a 25% reduction in revenue, and you cannot apply for a PPP and the Shuttered Venue Grant at the same time. You're not eligible if you receive a first draw or second draw PPP loan in 2021. And you can apply if you received a PPP loan in 2020. So not in 2021, but you can if it was in 2020. And then the next slide. So we're going to go on to any questions. Molly, you can unmute yourself and at this point ask any questions if you have any. No.
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, great. And we're going to move on then, Laura. So Molly, you know the drill. If you have any clients that you think would benefit from the SBDC counseling program, they can access that through this website. You can just go on the Maricopa SBDC.com site, and it's a very simple process. You just click the counseling, answer a few questions. That will go then to Connie, and she'll assign a counselor. It's very quick and easy, and it should be within just a few days. And we appreciate anybody that you would send over. Great for them, great for your clients, and good for us as well. So we appreciate that in advance. And then the next slide, Laura. And Amber, you were going to kind of go into, or no, well, we just talked about this. The process is that you request the counseling. You have your clients we'll have several sessions, however many they would like. Whenever they have questions, they can use us for years, or they can use us just for one time. But we're here to help them. And, again, we have a lot of tools for them to be able to track their business goals and growth. And Molly, one of the areas that we really focus on with many of our clients is making sure their financials are in order. So I think you would be able to appreciate that as well. And now Amber will take it away.
Thanks. So we do have a couple of webinars that are coming up, and I apologize, we're going a little bit over, you guys. I hope you're okay on time, but the upcoming webinars are listed here. You can also register to see those at the maricopa.sbdc.com/events. And then also we always encourage you to follow us on social media for any program updates. We have a really great team that keeps us on top of all of that. But if you're interested in the upcoming webinars, I encourage you to please register. And again, like Nancy said, make sure that we, share, tell everyone. We're not able to market ourselves other than our website. So word of mouth helps people get to our webinars. It helps, with our training and that kind of thing for our clients and our business owners to get the best education they can in regards to what we have going on. All right, so there's a lot of things that we know that business owners need help with, and we probably don't know necessarily who to ask. Thanks, our SBDC is here to help. So just make sure that as we listed here, we have updated COVID-19 resources. Like I said, our training event calendar, make sure you review that because we always have something going on. And we encourage you to follow us, like I said, on social media. There's just a lot of things that we try to do to help the business community. And if there's anything that that you don't see that we need to put on here, just let us know. We'd love the feedback. I also just wanted to add one more comment. And one of my clients, and it's actually client/friend, said that the only bad conversation is the one that we didn't have. And so I always say that because I just want to encourage our clients, our potential clients as well, to let Maricopa SBDC have that conversation with you, and keep in mind that we're working remotely, but please contact us to request for counseling by visiting our website. We do use Zoom as our platform to do our sessions, is what we call them, and our sessions are free. If you visit the website that's listed here, you can see our biographies and all of that kind of stuff too. We appreciate you guys so much. And I did feel bad. I wanted to make sure I thank Donna too. Donna and Laura both always keeps us on our toes. And usually we do a better job at time management. We had some technical difficulties in the beginning, but I wanted to thank Donna and Laura as well for helping us with our presentation today. If you guys want, you can certainly reach out to us like we mentioned earlier, but we wanted to thank everyone for joining us today.
Thank you, Amber.
And thank you as well,
Nancy. We didn't have any questions in the box, so it was just Molly and Robert for their special VIP presentation. So actually only went 1 hour from when you actually started. So there you go.
Oh, thanks, Donna. That makes me feel so much better. I always worry about our clients' time and being mindful of that. And so I appreciate. Thanks for telling me that. Gosh, I was going to say one more thing, but it totally left my mind. But thanks, Donna, for telling us that. Do we have a survey, Laura, at the end?
Yes, we do have a survey at the end. So if Molly and Robert, if you could complete that survey at the end, that would really help us know how we can incorporate different topics into our future webinars to better support you and your business as well. And again, thank you, Amber and Nancy, for joining us today. And thank you, Molly and Robert, for hanging in there as we had some technical difficulties with our presentation today. So thank you all so much. Have a great day.
thank you.
Thank you, you too.